We'd like to welcome you to our current event and weekly Bible study for March 15th, 2015. And just to start out, to give you a little update regarding the Ken Hovind situation. And I did go down there, and I'll kind of get into that in a little bit. But just to give you some current updates on the situation, what ended up happening is the jury deadlocked against the Ken Hovind, at least 3 out of the 4 counts. This is from Eric Hovind, his son, and he says this morning at 10:30 the jury concluded their deliberation. Around 11:15 the verdict was read before the court. 4 counts were brought against Ken Hovind, 3 counts of mail fraud and 1 count of criminal contempt of court. Count 1, conspiracy to commit mail fraud. They were unable to come to a verdict. Count 2, mail fraud, unable to come to a verdict. Count 3, criminal contempt of court. That one he was found guilty on. According to the Pensacola News Journal, years ago, Hovind had been prohibited under a court order not to contest the government's lien on the properties. Okay, because they put liens on his properties that they had taken, and when that was settled, they said, don't contest this. This is part of the thing. So this is why he was found guilty on the criminal contempt of court, because he's contested them quite a few times. And then the Liz pendants, where it says, because he did file papers, including what they call a Liz pendants, which really means nothing more than litigation pending. That's what that means. It's a notice. It's not something where you're trying to say, I own this. You're noticing somebody that this property, there's litigation pending. So they noticed, I guess, the current owners of the property, that the litigation was still pending, even after it had been settled. So this warns potential buyers that the land is under dispute. Because of this, he was charged with contempt. The mail fraud charges were for actually mailing the documents from prison, these Liz pendants. So this is the one count he was found guilty of. Now, count number 4, mail fraud, they were unable to come to a verdict. So the jury was unconvinced that Hovind and the ministry trustee Paul Hansen had sought to defraud the government by mailing the documents. As they deadlocked, they could not come to an agreement on 3 of the 4 charges against Ken Hovind. The evolutionary foe was declared guilty of only one contempt charge. While supporters are disappointed that the jury declared Hovind guilty of any of the charges at all, they state that they are thankful for the outcome for the most part. Rudy Davis, who's been his main kind of guy in the trenches advocating for him, said, I think the Lord God Almighty worked there in a mighty way. Here, they threw their best lawyers. They had 5 days of prosecution. They read hundreds of documents, hundreds of emails, voicemails that they had sequestered, everything they could throw at the man, which is true. He basically had an IRS agent for the last, whatever, 8 years or whatever, Scott Schneider, basically reading every correspondence and listening to every phone call, and just trying to get anything they could possibly get against him. U.S. prosecutors Tiffany Eggers, who she was the little witch that was the main prosecutor. Oh, was she evil. I was in the courtroom. I was right there near. This woman was so evil. Wow. I guess it was a good thing that she rode a broom to work, because she could get to her COVID meetings really quick that way. It is all I could really come to the conclusion of. This woman was just evil, okay? Wow. To me, she appeared to be the most evil one of the lot, even more than the main judge, Judge Rogers, who I think Judge Rogers was trying to kind of give off the veneer of, I'm not a bad person. Listen, I'm trying to be reasonable. I'm letting Ken Hovind say a whole lot more than I would normally let him say. And from the standpoint of what was actually relating to this actual case, I guess in a way she did let him say quite a bit on the day he spoke, even though he wanted to speak for basically he said weeks. He wanted to read every single document that had been filed. The problem is when it comes to this case, she was only going to let him read things that pertained to the charges in this case. He wanted to read like everything going way back from the very beginning, and I understand why he wanted to read that stuff, but she wasn't going to permit that. But at the same time, she was like, kind of tried to come off as like the good guy, and I'm impartial and all of this other stuff, which I don't buy for a minute. Okay. So the three main people in this trifecta of evil were Prosecutor Tiffany Eggers, IRS agent Scott Schneider, and Judge Rogers are behind the charges filed against Ken Hovind. Really, you could see that they were working together in order to really get all of these charges to stick. And it really was them working together. And you could tell they were all on the same team. And it shouldn't be that way with the judge. Supposedly they're, the scales of justice or whatever, Lady Justice or whatever is blind or whatever. And it wasn't that way whatsoever. Originally, the good doctor, Rebecca Horton of Pensacola Christian College, was more than likely awarded handsomely by the IRS for falsely accusing Ken Hovind and reporting Hovind to the IRS. So evidently she had a lot to do with all of this, because evidently Pensacola Christian College is like right next to Ken Hovind's Creation Science Evangelism Dr. Dino whole little complex there. They're right near there. And I guess that Pensacola Christian College, being the wonderful Christians that they are, they wanted to make sure that Ken Hovind was taken down because evidently they didn't like the way he was, conducting himself. Because he wasn't fully given in, I guess, to Big Brother. I don't know. But, yeah. So, good old Dr. Rebecca Horton, you might want to pray for Pensacola Christian College. Had a lot to do with evidently this thing getting started. The criminal contempt of court count contained two different charges. One charge was from 2012 order, and the other was from a 2007 ruling from Judge Rogers. Kent was not found guilty on the 2012 charge, but was found guilty on the 2007 charge. The count was from the original 2007 case when Judge Rogers forfeited Ken Hovind's interest in the property. So they wanted all this money from him because of this structuring thing, which I got into last week. Him making cash withdrawals on a weekly basis to pay bills under $10,000, which is totally legal, but the IRS just said, no, you can't do that. Essentially, this is where this whole thing started. And this guilty charge, the count was from 2007 case when Judge Rogers forfeited Ken Hovind's interest in the property, which is what he's been trying to get back since then. The order did not restrict Kent from presenting filings to question this decision. Therefore, Kent's attorney asked the judge to rule that there were not enough facts presented to the jury to find Kent's guilty of that verdict. So they're trying to, what they're trying to do and appealing for is for the judge to have leniency, and I'm going to get into that in a second. The judge said that she would take that under advisement. Now, Ken Hovind's been a tremendous thorn in their side, much like my dad was when he was in this court battle to get his company back. He wasn't in a battle with the IRS, but he was in a battle with this ultra-rich family in Minnesota, evidently the fifth richest family in Minnesota, probably the Illuminati family. And he became a tremendous thorn in their side because this is how they conducted business. They would go around basically steal people's ideas and companies and patents and stuff like that. When you're dealing with somebody and you become a thorn in their side, and if they're evil especially, the one thing about this is that it would be a miracle if she didn't absolutely try to give him the maximum for the one count he's been found guilty on, because they took 4 bites at the apples with these 4 counts and only one stuck. So sentencing isn't until June 12th of 2015, so he's going to be in prison at least up until that point. But supposedly in this interim time period, she's going to be taking I guess, looking at sentencing guidelines and things of this nature. But considering how much animosity, how much of a thorn he's been in their side, how long this is drug out, how defiant in their eyes he's been to the court systems that have already ruled on these things, it would be a miracle that he didn't get the maximum sentence for this. And I'm going to get more into my own take on it in a minute. Let's go further. So let's see here. Thomas Keith, Kent's attorney, said that he only had a public defender defending him at this point. I think all their money's been pretty much exhausted. Thomas Keith, or maybe not. I'm not 100% sure what their monetary situation is, but I'm sure it was greatly depleted. Thomas Keith, Kent's attorney, said that in a federal case it is rare to see anything other than a guilty verdict. While he would still like the judge to find that there was not enough evidence presented on the contempt of court charge and overturn the verdict, this is considered a huge success. On the one guilty charge, if Judge Rogers does not overturn it, here's the deal. There is no limit to the penalty that she can impose. Now, there are sentencing guidelines, but supposedly here, and I've heard this on more than one occasion, there's no limit on this contempt of court case that she can impose. So, that is really, really heavy duty there, potentially. So even though he might have got out of 3 out of 4, this one might be all that's needed to keep him in jail the rest of his life. So he says, please pray that she would show leniency during the sentencing. And the sentencing again is on June 12th, 2015. And I'm going to read this, and then I'll get into kind of my take on everything. This is what we need to do now, a message from Eric Hovind. Attention, it is urgent to take an action now. Please do the following immediately. And all of this is on the PDF for March 15, 2015. Sign the petition for unconditional pardon for Kent Hovind and Paul Hansen. There's a petition at whitehouse.gov. Write and send a personalized letter to Judge Rogers in care of the public defender, Thomas Keith. Please maintain your Christian testimony, and then it gives you outlines of what you want to address, and then it gives you an address. You can do all that. Email, Facebook, Twitter, and write to Mayor Ashton J. Hayward of Pensacola, Florida, to pardon Kent Hovind. Write Ashton J. Hayward on a daily basis to please pardon Kent Hovind. And these are all the links on how to do that. Write a personalized letter to Mayor Ashton J. Hayward. Continue praying earnestly. Kent's attorney is attempting to get Kent out of jail and back into the federal facility because he's in a public jail right now. I guess federal facilities are a lot better. And that the government will not continue to pursue the 3 counts that the jury was unable to come to a verdict on, which is a possibility. Now, going back to my take on the whole thing. I went down there, struggled like crazy to get the teaching up that I did on Sunday, to get it done. I got it up, I think, Sunday night, but then I had a whole bunch of things I had to get done Monday morning. I got out of here probably around 11, drove there. It's a really long drive from where I was, a good 10 plus hours. I mean, by stopping to get gas and stuff like that. Got down there and then, checked in my hotel, went out early the next morning and saw Pastor Adams there and got to visit with Pastor Adams and some of the congregates from his church and got to see some people I hadn't seen in a while. So that was really cool. That was awesome. And then basically sat in the courtroom the whole day. We were outside, kind of. A lot of people had the signs and stuff, and made up. There were a lot of different types of Christians there that came to support him. And then basically, when they started letting people in around 8, we'd get in line to go in there. It's like getting on a plane probably without a TSA body scanner. It's metal detector and all that stuff, so you had to go through all that, and you get up into the courtroom, and it was pretty much The courtroom, they took away the whole first front row, the security there, so it kind of limited the space because that was a lot of space, and it was